U.S. President Donald Trump has called for a naval coalition with other nations to help secure Strait of Hormuz. While Trump claimed that many countries will dispatch warships to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, however, he did not offer details on which countries are on board. Oil prices have surged 40% as Iran has choked off the vital Strait of Hormuz and attacked Gulf energy facilities after earlier vowing that the U.S. Navy would very soon begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump called for reinforcement on Saturday. In a Truth Social post, Trump said nations, especially those affected by Iran's attempted closure of the strait, would be sending warships in conjunction with the U.S. to keep the strait open and safe. He named China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom among those he hoped would contribute. Later, while talking to NBC News, U.S. President said several countries have committed to helping secure the strait but declined to name any of them. He added, and I'm quoting, "They have not only committed, but they think it's a great idea." While Trump also said that U.S. may carry out more strikes on Iran's Karg Island oil export hub. Trump said that the recent U.S. strikes had totally demolished most of Karg Island, but added, and I'm quoting again, "We may hit a few more times just for fun." The Karg Island is the export terminal for 90% of Iran's oil shipments. He also claimed that Tehran appears ready to make a deal to end the conflict, but the terms are not good enough yet. Trump refused to answer a question on the terms of a potential deal, but he agreed that a commitment from Iran to completely abandon any nuclear ambition would be part of it. Well, to discuss more on this, we're now being joined by Captain Alok Bansal, Director of India Foundation and Executive Director of South Asian Institute for Strategic Affairs. He's joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Let's begin with the big question right now. U.S. President Donald Trump has called for a naval coalition that we just mentioned with other nations to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. How do you assess this strategy of Trump's while he also is willing to attack the Karg Island, as he calls it, just for fun?
See, as of now, this naval coalition looks a pipe dream of Donald Trump, which are the countries who are willing to contribute. Even U.S. Navy still not Strait of Hormuz, actually escorting the merchant ships. So if U.S. So I don't know other countries at this stage would be willing to go and like India and China already have certain exemptions from the Iranians, and I think their cargoes are, some of them at least, are transiting through Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians have very clearly made an exemption for Chinese. So the countries which are willing to contribute naval power is, at this point, seems extremely limited. As far as attacks on Karg Island are concerned, the US has still not targeted the export hub, because if they do so, the oil prices will again shoot through the roof, because as of now Iranian oil is transiting from Strait of Hormuz and is providing certain succor to the rising prices. So to my mind, I think most of the Trump's statements appear to be a bluster rather than based on reality. I'm really doubtful if Iranians have agreed for a deal. Iranians would be wanting a deal, but a respectable deal. So I think unconditional, to my mind, seems a far-fetched option at this juncture.
We seem to have some little audio, but I do get the idea of, yes, you do say that Trump, it's an idea which, but then we have had Trump mentioning that he's going to attack, and he has so far. So if at all he does attack the Karg Island, and if the oil, those targets are related to Iran's oil infrastructure, would that lead to what kind of reaction do you think other countries will have? Will they back Trump on this attack, or would they also want to be reacting on looking at how much damage is being suffered by all these other countries, not just Iran there?
See, as of now, the global population is fiercely against this attack. If you look at it, even support the ongoing operations. European countries, by and large, are against. Even the population in Gulf countries who are being targeted are not in favor of the US. But the regimes in Gulf are, of course, with the US, and they have till now not agreed to contribute troops or take the share of carrying out attacks on Iran. So that remains the situation. But if Kharg Island export terminal is actually destroyed, then even China may have to come out openly, because the country that will be affected the most will be China. We also need to understand that US has not been successful in even pushing the Kurds to go into Iran, because Kurds want certain guarantee which US is not being able to give. And US has proved to be a very unreliable ally as far as Kurds are concerned, because they have been ditched in Syria, they have been ditched in Iraq. So they obviously don't want to risk their necks at the behest of an ally who's going to turn its back on them once its objectives are achieved. So I think US needs to change its strategy as far as Israel is concerned. For them, it suits to have the war going on, because that would weaken the Iranian state considerably. And that, I think, I'm not sure whether for President Trump, that's a good strategy, because he'll have to sell this war to the domestic audience, which at the moment don't seem to be approving of his.
We seem to be having some little technical issues right there on the audio, but yes, of course, we get the idea of how this Kharg Island plays such an important role, considering the fact that it's not just the West Asian countries, it's also China who has been importing oil from that place. All right, all the, as you mentioned, Dr. Banso, that of course the objectives, as Trump had also mentioned, is very different. He did say, the statement came out yesterday, of course, Trump saying that the objectives might be different for U.S. and Israel. Would that in anyhow impact the operation that is going on right now against Iran?
See, I don't know how Trump is thinking, because his statements are so inconsistent. And I don't think so his advisors are in a position to advise him, because most of his major advisors are quiet. You haven't heard any statement from Vice President. You haven't heard anything from people like Tulsi Gabbard. Even Rubio has generally been doing the cleaning up job once his statements have been made. He tries to justify his statements in light of which to make it more palatable to the public at large. But apart from Energy Secretary and one or two people in the Pentagon, there is not very clear-cut support as far as Trump administration is concerned. So one really doesn't know how he's thinking or what he's thinking. But one thing is certain, that as days pass by and midterms start approaching, because the primaries will start, that will create a problem, and that will create some pressure on Trump to come to some sort of a negotiated settlement, because I'm sure American public would definitely not approve of a prolonged war. And as of now, despite his statements, I don't think so US is prepared to put boots on ground, except in some isolated areas like Kharg Island, etc. It may be feasible for US to put boots on ground, because that terminal they could probably control easily, because it's a small island. But onto the mainland Iran, I don't think so that US, despite its statement, is planning to put boots on ground.
And also, let's come to India. How would you analyze India's move? Of course, we have got the permission to get our vessels back from the strait, and we also have deployed warships at that in that area just to help out with this, escorting the ships if needed. When we look at the situation back home due to the oil and LPG moderation that's going on, how would you assess India taking or playing a part in this whole West Asia conflict diplomatically?
See, firstly, India is one of the few countries that could mediate, actually, that could credibly mediate, because we have good relations with both United States and Iran, and we are in communication with them. And at the moment, of course, for government of India, it's very important that its shipments from Persian Gulf continue to Indian ports unhindered. But at the same time, we need to understand that most of the production facilities are shutting down, because Iraqi oil production, they had no storage, they have shut down. More importantly, Qatari gas production, the LNG liquefaction plants, etc., have actually shut down, and it will take considerable time to revive them. So, this being the case, we may start facing problem. But Indian Navy is one of the few navies that has today the capability to escort its ships. Of course, we are in touch with Iranians and keeping them informed that Indian ships are going out. So that will be a better option, so that there are no even conflict, or there is no confusion, because as it appears, that in Iran, the command and control has got so decentralized that a central authority is not able to control it completely. And that's probably the reason why you are seeing attacks on friendly countries from Iran's perspective, like Oman and Turkey, which have not really come out openly against Iran, but you are seeing attacks against them. This probably, to my mind, is a factor of decentralization that has taken place, where individual commanders are autonomously taking decisions. So in that sort of a scenario, even if the central authority says, yes, we will allow so-and-so ships to pass by, you need to be a little careful. And I think to that effect, Indian naval ships escorting the tankers would be a good proposition.
All right, of course, we'll be looking forward to any update that we go forward after this whole development. Thank you so much for joining on the broadcast and giving your perspective, Captain Batsu.